Shall we start now?
Sir, some more people are yet to join.
Okay, right. No problem.
Yes. So we can start. So they will be joining soon, sir.
Okay. So, hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
So, we'll start the class. Can you able to see?
Yes, sir. The screen is visible.
Okay. So, today's topic will be valvular heart diseases, right? So, when you considered our heart, this is quite a basic things which I want to touch. So, our heart includes four valves. Two valves includes the AV valves, which is nothing but your tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. And the other two valves includes your semilunar valves, which is nothing but your aortic valve and pulmonary valve. You know, from the basic anatomy and physiology, valves are made up of connective tissue, which consists of collagen, fibrous tissue, and our endocardium. Okay. So now the location of valves, where the valves are located. The tricuspid valve is located in the fourth intercostal space, the right half of the sternum. When you come to the mitral valve, it's located on the fourth costal cartilage on the left half of the sternum. Pulmonary valve, it is on the third costal cartilage, medial end of the sternum, and aortic valve, third intercostal space, left half of the sternum. Okay. Now we move on to the tricuspid valve alone. When we look into the tricuspid valve, the valve is made up of three cusps. As the name suggests, three. So three cusps are there, and an annulus fibrous ring covers the tricuspid valve. There are some commissures. We'll look into it later on. The three cusp includes anterior, posterior, and septal. When you look into the cusp has a free margin, a connected margin, and AV surfaces. Okay. So the cusp are attached to the interior part of the ventricles through the chordae tendineae, which are the fibrous cords that attaches the free margin to the papillary muscle of the heart. And what is the role of papillary muscle here? Papillary muscle prevents prolapse of the valve cusp into the atrium in case of ventricular contraction. Okay. So all these things together constitutes the valve apparatus. Okay. So when we look into the tricuspid valvular diseases per se, tricuspid stenosis and tricuspid regurgitation are the two common diseases. So the tricuspid stenosis is nothing but your narrowing of valvular cusp. It is nothing but narrowing of valvular cusp so that blood flow from atrium to ventricle is obstructed. Whereas when you come into the tricuspid regurgitation, it is due to incomplete closure of the valve, which leads to re-entry of blood from the ventricles to the atrium, which is nothing but your backflow. At this point of time, you should be able to understand between the stenosis and regurgitation. Stenosis is narrowing of the valvular cusp, whereas regurgitation is backflow due to incomplete closure of the valves. I think I made myself clear in this aspect. When you come into the tricuspid stenosis, it's quite a rare type of valvular heart disease, and isolated tricuspid is rare, usually associated with MS or TR. MS is nothing but your mitral stenosis or tricuspid regurgitation. A tricuspid stenosis alone cannot occur. So it will be always associated with mitral stenosis or tricuspid regurgitation. And you'll be knowing from your pathology classes, the most common cause of these valvular heart disease, which is acquired, is rheumatic fever. And it is quite common in females, and congenital tricuspid stenosis is the second most common in males compared to females. When you come to the pathophysiology, narrowing of valvular cusp due to calcification, thickening that interferes with entry of flow of blood to the ventricles from the atrium. So this we already discussed. Calcification, thickening interferes with entry of blood into the ventricles from atrium. So what happens? As blood flows decreases, as blood flow decreases from the right ventricle to the atrium, what and all is going to happen? There is decreased blood flow from the pulmonary vessels and there is decreased cardiac output. The most important point here is decreased cardiac output. Okay. And on the opposite hand, it leads on to the increased right atrial pressure. Whenever there is increased right atrial pressure, what is going to happen next? There will be severe venous congestion. Okay. So now what are all the symptoms? Symptoms are basically based on your decreased cardiac output. Whenever your cardiac output decreases, what is going to happen? There will be easy fatigability. The patient feels extremely tired. And there will be exertional dyspnea. So exertional dyspnea, on doing a light activity, the patient feels breathless. And due to venous congestion, there will be right heart failure symptoms. Now, what are all the right heart failure symptoms? Number one, elevated jugular venous pulse. Second thing is your ascites. Ascites is nothing but your collection of fluid in the abdomen. There will be peripheral edema in your legs. There will be abdomen pain due to congestion of the liver. Abdominal distension, again nothing but your ascites, and there will be decreased urine output. Urine output decreases due to decrease in the cardiac output. So these are all the features of right heart failure. Elevated JVP, ascites, bilateral pedal edema, abdominal pain, and decreased urine output. When you come to the examination finding, general examination. So we'll start from the head to foot. So pallor will be there? No, not much. As hypoxia develops due to pulmonary vasculature, poor supply, polycythemia is present. Polycythemia is nothing but your increased in the hemoglobin content. Your PCV is increased, packed cell volume is increased, hemoglobin is increased. That is nothing but your reactive hypoxia due to poor pulmonary supply. Okay, so you won't see much of pallor. Icterus may be present when there is congestion of the liver. I told the reason for abdominal pain is congestion of the liver. So icterus may be present. Pedal edema, quite often it is present. Cyanosis, lymphadenopathy, not much. When you look into the neck at 45 degrees, there will be distended pulsations, which is nothing but your elevated JVP. Build may be malnourished. When you come into the systemic examination, your cardiovascular system, it is due to loud S1. The point here to notice loud S1. Opening snap in some cases of tricuspid stenosis, followed by S2 and a mid-diastolic murmur. So the typical description for your stenosis lesion is a mid-diastolic murmur. Diastolic phase murmur, which is present in the mid. Okay. It increases with inspiration and decreases with expiration. So when you ask the patient to deeply inspire, the murmur will increase, and vice versa on expiration. Now where the murmur will be heard? Left lower sternal border and in the xiphoid process. When you look into the JVP, it will be pulsatile, and most common site is your right sided IJV, internal jugular vein, which indicates right atrial pressure is increased. Okay, so whenever your right atrial pressure increases, you can see a giant A wave due to increased right atrial pressure. Okay, all these JVP, opening snap, all these things can be discussed when you come to the wards. Okay, I cannot talk much about the theoretical part of clinical examination in this online classes. Okay, so whenever you come to ward classes directly, you can discuss detail about JVP, you can discuss about opening snap. Okay, as of now, just note it down as opening snap followed by S2 and a mid diastolic murmur. When you come to the respiratory system, there is no much abnormalities except there will be mild wheeze or crepitations when there is a congestion of your lungs. When you come to the abdominal examination, there will be enlarged liver and sometimes hepatic pulsations will be present. Tenderness over right upper quadrant due to congestion. This I have already discussed. Central nervous system, nothing much. When you come to the lab investigations, how are you going to approach this patient? So routine investigations you have to do. complete blood count, which is nothing but your CBC. So you will see polycythemia, very rarely leukocytosis. Leukocytosis is nothing but your increase in total count. Okay. LFT, liver function test, is deranged due to liver congestion. So what and all you will look into the liver function test. Total bilirubin may be sometimes elevated. Direct bilirubin, indirect bilirubin, and your enzymes like your SGOT and SGPT. When you take an ECG, we already discussed the reason for right atrial enlargement. So whenever there is a right atrial enlargement, there will be tall P waves in lead V1 and lead 2. It indicates P pulmonale. So what will be the size of the P wave? It will be more than 2.5 mm. And sometimes atrial fibrillation may also be present. When you look into the chest X-ray, right atrial enlargement may be visible. And how are we going to finally conclude that this is a valvular heart disease? We do a echocardiogram, which is nothing but your scan of your heart. It is done to identify the valve size, thickening of the right atrium or right ventricle, or dilatation. Pulmonary atrial pressure is measured. Mitral valve size and thickening is also measured. Next, we move on to tricuspid regurgitation. We broadly classify regurgitation murmurs into primary and secondary causes. Okay. Primary, first and most common thing is your rheumatic heart diseases. Second thing is your congenital cause, which is nothing but your Epstein anomaly. Other rare causes like your endocarditis, post-radiation or therapy, carcinoid tumors of the body, connective tissue disorders like your Marfan syndrome or osteogenesis imperfecta, and some medications like your methotrexate and fenfluramine. Very rarely, trauma can lead on to acute tricuspid regurgitation and myxomatous disorders like TV collapse. Okay. Secondary causes are the most common causes. So that causes right ventricle dilatation. What are all the causes of right ventricle dilatation due to tricuspid regurgitation? First thing is your post myocardial infarction. Second thing is your mitral stenosis or mitral regurgitation. When you look into the tricuspid valvular pathology, mostly it will be associated with the mitral valve disorders like your mitral stenosis or mitral regurgitation. Third thing is your pulmonary arterial hypertension. You can see in chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, left heart failure and cardiomyopathy. So these are all the causes of right ventricular dilatation which lead on to tricuspid regurgitation. The basic pathology in primary is the valve apparatus, that is the leaflet, chordae, tendineae, papillary muscles are affected. But when you look into the secondary cause, in these it is due to RV dilatation, annulus is dilated, and it leads to improper closure of the leaflets. Okay. When you look into the pathophysiology, as backflow, already we discussed backflow. As backflow of blood occurs, right atrial pressure further increases and increased in venous congestion. Okay. So the symptoms mostly occurs due to left heart failure. On the opposite hand, we looked into a right heart failure in tricuspid stenosis. Now, when it comes to the tricuspid regurgitation, mostly it occurs due to secondary to left heart failure. So, what are all the symptoms of left heart failure? Orthopnea and paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, abdominal distension and abdominal pain, swelling of the legs, sometimes loss of appetite with fever can also constitute left heart failure symptoms. When you come into the systemic examination, JVP bilaterally pulsatile. Okay. And all these things you can note it down. Fast Y descent as the valve opens. Prominent V waves due to backflow of the venous refilling of the atrium. The main thing you want to note down is holosystolic murmur. Holosystolic murmur, it increases with inspiration, which is nothing but your Carvalho sign. The best site for your murmur is your left fourth intercostal space. Due to the right ventricular dilatation, your apical impulse will be hyperdynamic. And respiratory system, you can see pleural effusion. So if you have pleural effusion, air entry may be decreased, which leads on to bilateral crackles. When you look into the abdominal examination, there may be hepatomegaly, and you do this hepatojugular reflex, which is nothing but you apply pressure, 30 seconds pressure on the right upper quadrant. And if tricuspid regurgitation is present, it indicates more than 3 mm rise of jugular venous pulse. And in CNS, nothing much. When you come to the laboratory findings, CBC will have leukocytosis due to endocarditis. So endocarditis is a deadly complication of tricuspid regurgitation. LFT may be deranged due to liver condition, and cultures to be sent at least 3 samples for endocarditis. Just X-ray when you take, there may be a pleural effusion and cardiomegaly. When you take an echo, you can see right ventricular dilatation, pulmonary arterial hypertension, tricuspid annular dilatation to find the size, which is mainly for your surgical operative procedures. You can also do a cardiac MRI or a transthoracic echo for further investigation. When you come to the treatment part, in tricuspid valvular diseases, first thing we will look into the medical therapy. Medical therapy, you first start with diuretics, like your furosemide, to promote diuresis, okay? Because they have ascites, fatal edema, urine output is decreased, and there will be volume overload state. So in order to overcome this volume overload state of your body, you start with diuretics. Okay? Preferred drug will be furosemide. Next thing is your cardiac glycosides. Cardiac glycosides, the name of the drug is your digoxin. It is used to increase your contractility of the heart. In case of atrial fibrillation, where it is a complication of stenosis lesion, you start patient on anticoagulation. In that case, in a case of operated patient for mitral valve such as warfarin. Warfarin is an anticoagulation. If you suspect an endocarditis after sending 3 blood culture samples and doing an echo, you start the patient on IV antibiotics. And overall medical management depends on your salt restriction and fluid restriction. Salt restrictions mainly for your sodium and water retention. Fluid restriction is maximum up to 750 to 800 ml of water. When you come to the surgical therapy, either a tricuspid valve repair or tricuspid valve replacement for regurgitation murmur, regurgitation lesion. Mitral valvotomy or mitral valve replacement is also beneficial when it is associated with other conditions like mitral stenosis and mitral regurgitation. Okay. So I think tricuspid lesions are over. So next we move on to pulmonic valvular diseases. Okay. As we looked into the tricuspid stenosis, which is also a very, very rare condition, this pulmonary stenosis is also very, very rare condition. Okay. And when you look into the etiology, it is a congenital disorder. And what is this Noonan syndrome? It is PTPN gene mutation in chromosome 12, where there is a carcinoid tumor obstructing the valve associated with endocarditis. So, what is the pathophysiology of pulmonary stenosis? Increased systolic pressure gradient between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. So, what is going to happen now? When there is increased systolic pressure between RV and pulmonary artery, there will be enlargement of your right ventricle. So, right ventricular hypertrophy is seen, which again leads to tricuspid regurgitation. Okay. The main important point here is cardiac output is maintained until late in the disease because of normal left ventricle. So whenever there is normal cardiac output with a normal left ventricle, you won't see much symptoms. Okay. Cardiac output is maintained until late in the disease because of normal LV. The main thing affected here is your right ventricle. So when you look into the symptoms, mild and moderate pulmonary stenosis, patient usually will be asymptomatic. They are found incidentally on examination by a early systolic click and when you do an echocardiography. In case of severe pulmonary stenosis, the patient will complain of exertional dyspnea, fatigue, and anginal type of chest pain. What are all the clinical signs? There will be a mid-systolic murmur, crescendo, decrescendo. So there will be a high quality and a low quality type, increased in intensity with inspiration, which is heard in the left second intercostal space. And when you look into the JVP, A waves is increased in JVP due to increase in the right ventricular pressure. Parasternal heave. What is parasternal heave? When you keep your ulnar border on the sternum, you can see the raising of your hand due to RV hypertrophy. That is nothing but your parasternal heave. And there may be features of right heart failure, which is nothing but your edema, ascites, and hepatomegaly. Now, how are you going to diagnose pulmonary stenosis? When you do a ECG, there will be tall P waves in lead 2. 2.5 mm suggestive of right atrial enlargement. When you look the R wave in V1, it will be more than 7 millivolts, which is suggestive of right ventricular hypertrophy. So there is right atrial enlargement and right ventricular hypertrophy when you take an ECG. And when you see the echocardiography, it confirms the diagnosis. And the degree of severity, it depends on the pulmonary valve pressure gradient. Okay. So when it is more than 15 mm of mercury, it is a severe type. When it is 30 to 50, it is a moderate type of pulmonary stenosis. And the main treatment here is your furosemide. That is nothing but your diuretics. So diuretics play an important role for relieving the congestive symptoms. And the indications of balloon valvuloplasty is more than 50 millimeters of mercury in symptomatic patients or more than 60 mm of Hg in asymptomatic patients. Okay. I think this is too much for you. So when you look into this, you can see the red arrow line, which is nothing but your P waves more than 2.5 mm. And your blue lines, which is nothing but your right atrial enlargement. Okay. The next thing is your pulmonary regurgitation. Mostly pulmonary regurgitation alone cannot occur. It's quite rare thing. So only a long-standing pulmonary hypertension may be the cause for pulmonary regurgitation or post-surgery, RVOT or TOF, and post-valvuloplasty, very rarely in carcinoma. As such, pulmonary regurgitation is quite rare disorder. Isolated PR. Now, what is the pathophysiology? Increased preload in right ventricle. So what happens when there is an increased preload in right ventricle? Right ventricle and right atrial dilatation occurs, which lead on to congestive symptoms. So the symptoms depends on mild to moderate, asymptomatic, incidentally found on examination by murmurs and echo. It's similar like your pulmonary stenosis. Severe thing lead on to exertional dyspnea, fatigue, abdominal fullness, and bloating. So the main important thing here is you have to understand about the Graham Steele murmur, which is a high-pitched murmur, low intensity, increases in intensity with inspiration, which is best heard in your left second intercostal space. Just try to learn all these murmur. This can be appreciated only when you come to ward classes. Nothing to speak much about murmur in theory class. A prominent A wave in JVP, which is due to increased right ventricular pressure, and right heart failure symptoms again can occur due to pulmonary regurgitation. Diagnosis again same thing. Tall P waves more than 2.5 mm, which is suggestive of your right atrial enlargement. And in V1, R wave more than 7 mm, which is your right ventricular hypertrophy. Echocardiography to look the jet of regurgitation and function of the pulmonary valve. Treatment again diuretics, which is your furosemide to relieve the congestive symptoms, and surgical valve replacement of pulmonary regurgitation only with your severe diseases. Okay, I think I covered the basic thing for pulmonary and tricuspid. You can learn more and more when you come for clinical ward rounds. Any other doubt?
Sir, in the tricuspid stenosis murmur, sir,
Yeah.
the opening snap is followed by S2, or is it S2 is followed by the opening snap, sir?
Opening snap followed by S2.
Opening snap opening snap and then S2 comes, sir.
3, 4, S2, yes.
I didn't get you, sir.
Opening snap occurs first. You're asking S2 followed by opening snap or opening snap followed by S2?
Yes, sir, I'm asking that.
S2 comes first, then comes your opening snap.
Okay, like in mitral stenosis only, sir. Sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Whatever
like,
you was right.
okay, sir.
Anyone have any doubt?
Sir, and maybe why this post-stenotic, if there's pulmonary stenosis, then why this dilatation of artery, pulmonary artery?
You're asking in pulmonary stenosis.
Yes, sir.
Any stenotic lesion can lead on to dilatation in your distal part. You're able to follow?
Uh,
Whenever there is a stenosis, it is due to narrowing of your valves.
yes, sir.
Okay. So any part distal to the Stenotic lesion will go for dilatation.
So, but wouldn't there be reduced flow, sir? Then how dilatation?
Flow is different, dilatation is different. Blood flow is different.
Okay, sir.
Dilatation measures your arterial circumference. Flow is measured by your jet velocity through your echocardiogram. So both are
Yes,
different.
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
They all have come 219 total.
223. Okay, 222, sir, total.
222. You just take the absentees list alone. You can send me through WhatsApp.
Okay, sir.
I can submit to the department tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.